I want to ask, do you guys think that we are ready for the next big storm? Do you actually think Toronto's prepared for the next big storm?
Do you think Toronto's ready for the big storm?
I think maybe some people are ready for a big storm, and then there's a lot of really vulnerable people downtown on our streets who are not ready.
It kind of worries us, but
it's scary. No one
try
knows
to be
what's
ready.
gonna be like next year, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of freaky.
I do actually, yeah.
Yeah?
Definitely. Toronto's ready to go.
Is Kingston ready for more bigger storms?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah?
I live in North York,
Okay.
so we only lost power for 4 hours, and that was it.
In the last year, Canada's largest city has witnessed both flooding and a major ice storm that took out power for days at a time. Are we really ready for the next big storm and increasingly violent weather? What must we do? And what are the consequences if we don't? Thank you very much for joining us on our discussion about stormwater infrastructure. And it's a very important topic given everything going on. We had a nice big storm in Toronto in July, and we know that storms are getting more frequent and worse, and as the unfortunate situation in the Philippines is illustrating for us, and quite vividly actually. So we're hearing a lot about these 100-year storms occurring much more frequently, every 5, 8, or 10 years. Do you think Canadian municipalities are well equipped to deal with these storms?
Current standards are based on the 100-year storm, and all of our infrastructure is built on that basis. Unfortunately, in order to change that, it requires sort of rethinking where everything's at today, and that's a fairly onerous process. And of course, with everything, it incorporates funding, and funding is based on how we size things.
One of the very first steps and one of the turning points for Ontario, for all municipalities in Ontario, actually came when Hurricane Hazel hit. And I say that because that storm had such great impact that it forced, I think it actually forced the province to look at what informally groups were doing, like citizen groups were doing around conservation, to form the Conservation Act.
Chris mentioned that Hurricane Hazel was sort of the first big thing that brought stormwater management to the forefront. There was recognition that we needed to do flood control. That was the first kick at the can. And then over time, things were built to deal with flood control. Then it became apparent that wasn't necessarily sufficient. So this has been sort of an evolving thing over the past 50-odd years. So I think historically, in terms of the separation between federal, provincial, local responsibilities, this wasn't really on the radar. And so it's something that has come onto the radar over time.
Do you think we're ready for the next big storm?
Definitely not.
No? Why not?
Because some people who had damage, especially people who had damage with like hydro and like water pipes, maybe their water pipes were frozen or popped, and then, so they would need more time to repair. And if the next big storm was to come, it definitely wouldn't be now, maybe in a couple more years.
I think if we can help, then I'm willing to pay for it. If there's something that will make things better for a lot of people, then I'm willing to pay for that. If that means higher taxes, I'm okay with that.
You always hear, well, your taxes aren't going to be raised from different levels of government. We won't raise your taxes. One of the things that is certain is that an assumption that's made is that the federal and the provincial level of government just assume things can go onto the property tax. Most municipalities we were finding through this study that most municipalities were just putting increases into the property tax to manage stormwater infrastructure and to try to increase the capacity of stormwater infrastructure.
I don't think anyone, like you, myself included, if we were to be asked, we don't want to hear that there's going to be an increase either on our property tax or an increase on any user fees. So what we have done and what we're prepared to do as a council and what we've been doing all along is to get as much information out to the public and out to businesses as possible.
just in terms of investments, like the federal government has put in place a Build Canada Fund. Build Canada Fund is a general infrastructure fund, but it wasn't actually a permanent type of funding that municipalities could apply for.
Can you talk about some of the innovative techniques that you and your firm would like to see municipalities adopt going forward?
Some of the examples would be green roofs or bioswales, bioretention gardens, and similar things that are really intended to deal with the water in a decentralized fashion, as opposed to relying on traditional storm sewers and stormwater management ponds, which are sized on what we thought were 100-year storms.
We're experiencing flooding issues in West Mississauga, in a community in West Mississauga where the stormwater ponds were put in. That was part of the overall development. That was it was a part of the whole application. And within, I guess maybe after 20 years, this community started experiencing flooding, and not due to extreme weather.
So one of the ways that's being contemplated is low impact development. And the idea behind that is that you're decentralizing all of that infrastructure. You're putting individual pieces of infrastructure on people's properties, all throughout the roadways, on businesses, on parking lots, on rooftops. So it could be anything from a green roof to a rain garden to a permeable pavement driveway. All of these types of things, even as simple as taking people's rooftops and draining them to their backyards instead of draining it to the driveway, which then goes to the street. All those things together will take away our reliance on these centralized hard pipe and concrete systems.
Abe, can you talk a little bit about how the stormwater abatement strategy has an impact on broader community energy and infrastructure issues?
The stormwater issue is really symptomatic of how we plan and deal with everything right now. The way municipalities go forward now is that they have to plan for the future in order to budget effectively. And again, the budget is a function of priorities. What matters to the municipality, what matters to its populace. So in a similar fashion to stormwater, energy issues, transportation issues, these are all things that over time really should be changing in order to reflect not only changing conditions, but our changing expectations for a level of service. Cities have to plan for the future. They have to plan for how they think they're going to grow. They have to plan so that they can set aside the money based on priorities and build things out. So, for example, if a municipality does its official plan, they project that their city is going to grow over the next period of time by so many thousands of people. That's going to require so much additional infrastructure. They need to set aside the money to build that infrastructure.
Interestingly enough, municipalities own about 65% of the infrastructure in a municipality, and based on legislation are required to maintain that for the viability of the communities. When it comes to these extreme storms, they're definitely having an impact, a social impact, an environmental impact, and an economic impact on municipalities. And it's important that all levels of government are working together along with other partners like the conservation authorities to address the issue, the impact that climate change is having, the extreme storms are having on infrastructure.
We have the regional council and the city council and the conservation authorities. This is the first time they'll be coming together in January to bring a report. They're all going to work together on one report that's going to say, okay, here are all of the impacts, here are the priority areas, and this is how the cities, the municipalities, Brampton, Caledon, and Mississauga have to work together, and here's how they can do it in this suggested implementation.
It's important that we all work together. NIMBYism hasn't gotten us very far. Make sure that your politicians know that you support better infrastructure. Follow us on Twitter. Let us know what topics are important to you and why we should care.